This is the Rebel Author Podcast, where we talk about books, business, and occasionally bad words. Hello, Rebels, and welcome to episode 49 of the Rebel Author Podcast. I can't believe how close we are to a landmark episode, and I also can't believe that we are nearly at the 1-year anniversary of this show. I'll be doing a few things to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the show, but I will go into those in more detail at another point. Today I'm talking to Jennie Nash all about how to have a side hustle and also how to be an author coach. I adored talking to Jennie. She is super personable and engaging, and I found her fascinating to talk to. And I also found it interesting because author coaching is for more people than you might think, and that's on both sides. So her business encompasses both the coaches and writers who want to be coached. So if you think you might fall into either of those brackets, or you might like to build your own side hustle, then this episode is for you. First to last week's question, which was how do you use data in your writing business? Only one comment this week, which I was kind of anticipating because it's a hard question to answer. But Edwin said, I brought the latest K-lytics for science fiction and fantasy, but other than garnering a few ideas of Amazon ad keywords, I have yet to see a way to use his offering to give my marketing efforts a boost. I'm not a data nerd, and most of what's there doesn't resonate with what I hope to accomplish. The same can be said for any data-heavy resources I may have come upon. I think that's completely fair enough. I really like the K-lytics reports. I get quite a lot from them, both in terms of categories to try things that I might not have thought of in my genre or just didn't know existed. So I get quite a few categories. And then from that, I can then also find comparison authors or books or series to then target. So I suppose it's the offering is what the offering is, and then it's, I guess, how you implement it or how you take it further. So I use it as a springboard to help me find more comparisons, to find things in my genre, and everybody has a different way of doing that. But I also like the reports so that I stay up to date with what the latest trends are. And I love that he does things like showing the covers for the top 100 titles in the genres, because I think when you've had those reports over time, you get to see the changes in cover trends as well, and that's always important for indie so that we stay on top of that. This week's question is, if you could do anything as a side hustle, what would it be? The book recommendation for this week is How to Write a Series by Sara Rosett. I read this book a few weeks ago because I was looking at some tips and advice for series writing as I start to percolate and mull over my next series, which is adult, I guess it's an adult magicians series called Murdering Magicians. It's darker than certainly the young adult stuff I've written, and I was just kind of wanting to read something that would, help me plan the series better. So I think the book did that, and I may even reach out and see if she would like to come on the show, actually. So yes, I will include links to that in the show notes. So in personal update news this week, I have almost finished drafting the prequel novella that I was writing for my young adult series. It's called Sirens. And I guess it's going to, I thought it might at one point end up between 22 and 25,000 words. But now I basically ended up hacking out some chapters that I thought I needed to include because I needed to include them. And actually, as I've started to delve deeper into what this book is, it doesn't need those chapters. So I've hacked out some. So I reckon it's probably going to end up at somewhere between 15 and 18,000 words. So it's really nice to actually be able to finish something. And okay, yes, I know it's short, but yeah, I will be able to have another finished book this year, which is going to be fantabulous. I have also been working on the prose course. I restructured it, as you know, I think I mentioned that last time, and I've been delving deep into using the senses and crafting that course. So I'm excited now. I sort of wobbled a bit. I've been struggling with doubt and imposter syndrome the last few weeks, as well as exhaustion and like just stress over trying to get my son into a school. And so yeah, it's nice to just be pushing forward now. Also, what else have I done this week? I've been doing some admin that's been long overdue and trying to just work on some of the basics of the business. I've left a lot of things over the last few months in order to just focus on getting words down. And yeah, there's only so long you can leave the business stuff before you have to start doing it. Oh yeah, just to say, don't forget the book that I co-wrote with Jay Thorne, 9 Things Career Authors Don't Do, Rebel Mindset, is out. So for all those rebels listening, or all those people who would like to be a little bit more rebellious, or who just enjoy the rebel aspect of this podcast, then do go and grab yourself a copy. It is in KU, so you can borrow it for free if you have a KU subscription. And the other thing to say is that the second book that I wrote with Jay on personal finance is out in about 10 days probably as this airs. So I'll include a pre-order link in the show notes. Do make sure you go and get it. It's probably the most personal book I've written to date. There's more about me, my life, and my history with finances and becoming a full-time author. So yeah, if you're interested, or even if you want a nosy, then go and grab yourself a pre-order copy of that. Also, I am currently running an audience survey. If coronavirus has taught me one thing, it's that focus is super important. And I suppose as a result of that, I am looking to reassess everything that I'm doing. And I think that's something that we should all do anyway. I think I knowingly dropped a few things that I probably shouldn't have. I probably picked up a few things that I shouldn't have. And I just think this is a good point in time to assess where I'm going from here. So this survey is basically over to you guys to see what I can provide best for you, what you guys enjoy most from me, to help me look at where I should be focusing, both to provide you guys with what you want, and also, I guess it's that Venn diagram. So how can I provide better value for my audience, and also where does that match with the things that I enjoy doing? So yeah, it's only 10 questions. It's very short. It shouldn't take you more than maybe 5 minutes to complete at the most. But I would be super grateful if you would complete it. And so I will include a link to that as well in the show notes. Oh yeah, and don't forget that I am doing a webinar with Pro Writing Aid on how to breathe life into your story, and that's on the 8th of October, so I will include links to that in the show notes as well. Listener Rebel of the Week this week is Jasmine Arch. Jasmine says, after I graduated, I spent a good 7 years in the University Hospital of Antwerp, working in radiology there under an utter demon of a professor in neuroradiology. He could make a nurse or tech walk away in tears from assisting him during a procedure. He was physically imposing, tall, etc., and he made full advantage of that to scare his staff. So one night on a late shift, he needed to get a chest x-ray himself, and my co-worker was petrified, so I took one for the team and made the x-ray. He comes out of the dressing booth afterwards, still tucking in his pants, as he joins me at the console to look at his x-rays. He stands so close behind me I was pressed up against the console desk, and says, "Bet you didn't expect this morning, that I'd be standing behind you tonight with my pants unbuttoned." I turned around deadpan and stared at him and replied, I didn't expect it one bit, but you have no idea how long I've been dreaming of it. He almost ran out of the room. That was the last time he tried to intimidate me. One thing I can thank him for is that no amount of bloated surgeon's ego now phases me. They can try to yell and bully me all they want, but nothing could be worse than what I already survived. I love that so much. I love that you basically gave him a taste of his own medicine. There is nothing sweeter than giving an asshole a taste of their own asshole, because they realise it is a short, sharp slap in the face. Well, that's easy for me to say this morning. And it shows them what they have been doing to everybody else. And I love that he basically ran out of the room. What a lecherous prick. Good for you, basically. Yeah, I loved it. I loved the story. I love every Rebel story. You guys know this. If you would like to be a Rebel of the Week, then please do send in your story. It can be any kind of rebellion, big, small, or somewhere in between. You can email your story to rebelauthorpodcast@gmail.com or tweet me at rebelauthorpod. New patrons this week. I was very surprised, and thank you both very, very much. First new patron is Denise Burnt. I hope I have said your surname correctly. And Ray Tararanga. I hope I have also said your surname correctly. Please do email me and tell me if I haven't. Thank you both very much for joining me. I really, really do appreciate the support on Patreon. As you guys know, because I say it every week, because I really fucking mean it. And so obviously a huge thank you to all my existing patrons as well. You guys genuinely help to keep the podcast running, and you for two reasons, not only financially but also because by having patrons it makes me feel like you guys want more of the podcast. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate it. If you would like to support the show and get early access to all of the episodes as well as bonus content, then you can from as little as $2 a month by visiting patreon.com/Sasha Black. And as always, that's Sasha with a C and not an S. This week's Rebel Author podcast is sponsored by a brand new sponsor. I am genuinely giddy with excitement to welcome Pro Writing Aid to the show as a sponsor. So I am going to tell you a little bit about Pro Writing Aid. Pro Writing Aid is an editing software and it is fan-freaking-tastic. I use it personally, and I guess you can describe it as like an all-encompassing grammar checker, style editor, and a writing mentor to boot. And that is just a few of the reasons that I bloody love this software. Pro Writing Aid is about more than just finding your grammar mistakes. Of course, writing grammatically perfect is ideal, but when you write grammatically perfect prose, it can still feel awkward and clumsy because not everything is about being grammatically perfect. And cue Pro Writing Aid. This is one of the things that Pro Writing Aid can help you with. It searches out elements like repetitiveness, vague wording, sentence length variation, overdependence on adverbs, what else? Things like passive voice, overcomplicated sentence constructions, and a whole shitload more. And it will provide you with 20 plus, I believe, different writing reports covering all of those topics and more. The app will make suggestions on your manuscripts for things that you could correct, along with offering detailed explanations for why you should make those corrections. And it also has a bunch of videos and quizzes to help you understand the reasonings behind those suggestions. Now, I won't ever recommend anything that I don't personally use and love, and I personally love Pro Writing Aid. I use it as my last line of defense. So I do a draft and then I'll do my own personal edit and then I run it through Pro Writing Aid. And you would not believe how much it still picks up, despite the fact I've probably read my manuscript a gazillion times. So yeah, other than the fact that it picks up all of those very writer specific things, I also love it as a last line of defense. And of course, Pro Writing Aid, nor any software for that matter, will ever replace a human editor. But what it does do is it helps you to self-edit your work to a deeper level. And that's so important, because when you then send your manuscript off to an editor, they will be able to focus on the meat of your story, your characters, and your prose, and helping you take your manuscript from what is a solid draft to something that is shiny and unicorn and glittery like, rather than the editor having to spend their time fixing basic writing issues. And as a developmental editor myself, I can tell you it is a huge frustration to me when I receive manuscripts that have a lot of basic mistakes in, because it means I can't help you, bring your manuscripts up to perfection, perfection in air quotes, of course, because I'm spending so much time correcting basic things. And Pro Writing Aid will help you eradicate those basic mistakes. So yeah, if you haven't checked it out, what are you doing with your life? I am going to include a link in the show notes to Pro Writing Aid software, as well as the Rebel Author discount code. So make sure you go check it out. Alrighty then, let's get on with the show interview. Welcome, Jennie Nash. Hello and welcome to the Rebel Author podcast. Today I am joined by Jennie Nash. Jennie is the founder of Author Accelerator, a business that has trained more than 50 book coaches to support authors through the entire creative process of writing a book. In addition to Author Accelerator, Jennie has been working as a private book coach for 8 years. Writers serious about reaching readers have trusted Jennie to coach their projects from inspiration to publication, landing top New York agents and book deals with houses such as Scribner, Simon & Schuster, and Hachette. Jennie started her career on staff at Random House and has spent 30 years on all sides of the publishing industry. She is the author of 9 books and has written hundreds of magazine articles for national publications. She has taught in the UCLA Extension Writers Program and spoken at writing conferences all over the country. Welcome.
Thank you. My bio has never sounded better than in your beautiful your beautiful accented voice. So I'm just gonna sit back and listen to.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I think it's just British accents generally, but I feel like that about American ones. So
that's so funny. Yeah, I think we all sort of swoon when we hear them.
Absolutely. Okay, tell everyone a little bit more about you and your writing journey and how you ended up where you are today.
Well, I was a mid-list writer. All those books you talked about, 6 of them were published by Big 5 publishers. I had 3 memoirs and 3 novels out. And a mid-list writer is exactly what it sounds like. It's just stuck in the middle. You're neither a debut author with all the excitement and promise, nor have you broken through to be, a big seller. So you're sort of in the middle. And it's a place a lot of new writers would love to be, but when you're actually there, it didn't feel so great. And so I was feeling a little bit like my writing career was stalling out and struggling and stuck. And around the same time, I started teaching in the UCLA program and was really finding my feet as a teacher and a inspirer of writers. And I didn't know that I had such a philosophy of teaching writing, but it began to emerge during those years. And what I noticed was so many of my colleagues in the teaching program, we teach writing, we teach craft, we teach, here's how to write dialogue, here's how to write a scene, here's how to get emotion on a page, whatever the skill or the craft piece is. And those are things that we need, but it's a little bit like teaching somebody to install a sink faucet in their house and thinking that you've taught them how to build a house, and I was feeling this frustration and started thinking about a new way, a sort of more holistic way of teaching, and was bringing that into my work. And one of those colleagues who was very craft focused actually asked me if I would help her write a book all the way from zero to publication. She had this very strong vision and this very strong idea, and she just didn't know how to go about it. So she wanted a process and a system and a structure around it. And I said, I think I know how to do that. So we sort of entered into this experiment together, and it worked out so beautifully. That writer was Lisa Cron, and that book was Wired for Story, which became
Holy shit!
right? It became
Yeah,
a
I have
massive,
that book.
yeah, became a massively big seller. She became enormously popular in the writing world. And then I helped her write her second book, Story Genius, and she's actually just finished her third, which will be out soon after, well, next year. But so she got a whole new career, and as a writer and a speaker and a teacher to everyone, and I got a whole new career because all of a sudden I thought, oh, this is using all my superpowers. This is even better than writing. This is even better than teaching. This is all the things. And I began forming this framework for being a coach. And the next two writers that I worked with both landed big five book deals as well. So I had this 100% success rate, and it just took off from there. And I realized that I had been a really good writer, but it turns out I'm an exceptional book coach, and it felt like I really found my place. And as you said in the intro, I started a book coaching company, and that has been a whole other journey, which I'm sure we'll get into.
That's amazing. Like, what a success streak. Oh my God. Yeah, I did go on your website and sort of see some of the books but it's just amazing. Um, okay, so we are here to talk about book coaching. Can you tell everyone what exactly is book coaching, or what exactly is a book coach?
So the reason people don't know what it is, I should talk about that first of all, is because it's very new. The publishing industry has changed a lot over the years, and it's changing right in front of us. Even as we speak, it's changing all the time, and it's becoming more, well, I guess I call it flatter, right? Where there's not just gatekeepers, and if there's more openings for writers to get their work out. But what's been squeezed out of the publishing industry was that mentoring or nurturing or ongoing sustaining support for writers that traditional publishing used to give back in the day. I always think of Max Perkins and Hemingway as back in the day. And that just doesn't exist anymore. The publishing industry moves so fast, and it's looking for the next big hit. It's hungry for books that are ready to go. It's hungry for people that already have platforms. And so the idea of a writer being nurtured has just sort of gone missing. And so what a book coach does is we fill that gap. We're there for a writer while they're working. So an editor typically comes in when the work is finished, and they make it better. And anybody who's ever been edited knows that that's the dream. I love being edited. I have such massive respect for what editors do. But what book coaches do is come into the process even before that. So all the way through, while a writer is thinking and conceiving of the book and trying to get it on the page and working it out, and also trying to come into their identity as a writer and dealing with all the emotions of the process. So we end up being a project manager, an editor, a cheerleader, backboard for ideas, and just being really, I think of it as being just down in the muck of the creative process with the writer. And it's quite like, we're very used to people who have coaches for sports or for music, or even like an executive business coach. And it's quite like that, but for writing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never thought about the comparison with things like sports, but that's so right. And even, the athletes who are at the top of their game have coaches. So why shouldn't writers who are, trying to get to the top of their game or at the top of their game have a coach too? Can anyone be a book coach, or do you think it takes a certain type of person? You sort of talked a bit about the emotion side and that. So I'm just, I'm thinking about Myers-Briggs, and I'm a massive T on the Myers-Briggs scale. So my coaching is probably more along the lines of get it done, bitch,
Well,
I know, I run accountability in my Facebook group, and I'm a hard-nosed bitch when it comes to that too. But
I mean, that's a certain kind of style. Um, I I do think there are some people this is not suited to, and really you hit on one of them. You have to have a certain amount of patience. You have to have a certain amount of desire to teach and comfort with the messiness. The creative process is very messy, and there's times in the process where it looks like you've taken a deck of cards and thrown it up in the air and let them fall on the ground, right?
yeah.
And a coach can't be the kind of person who's going to freak out about that or try to rush through that. So yeah, I mean, there's some people that I don't think would be suited to it, but those who are suited to it, usually when they hear about it, they think, oh, wait, that's my dream. That's my dream job.
So what kind of personality traits would actually make a good coach?
So I think the number one thing is compassion for writers and the writing process. I don't have to tell you, writers are crazy. When I'm talking about like the chaos of the process, they're crazy. I'm one of them, so I'm telling on myself here. You get crazy. I happen to, in the last 2 weeks, I have 3 clients who are pitching right now. And it's kind of unusual. Usually, I'll have one client who's pitching, but to have 3 who are pitching at the same time, and these all happen to be incredibly competent, very successful women who have, the polish, they're polished and poised and the whole thing. And every single one of them is just losing their mind and, freaking out. And so a good book coach is going to have compassion for that. You're going to know that that's okay and that's part of it. So I think that's the first thing. The other characteristics would be curiosity. So a lot of the times I'm just asking questions. Well, why are you making that choice? Why are you doing that? What is this in here for? What is the purpose of that scene? Explain this to me. I don't understand what you're doing here. So it's kind of a curiosity about what's in the writer's brain and what's on the page, and digging into that. And I think you hit on it when you said, just get it done, bitch. I think you have to have a sense of project management. So a toughness in, we're going to hit this goal and I need you to do these pages and I want to see this and this is what's going to come next. So an ability to manage a project, whatever your style is, but to manage that project. And then finally, this is a thing I'm really adamant about these days. I think a book coach is going to be successful needs to have some entrepreneurial skills and a sense of the modern digital marketplace, because we don't have a storefront. You're not opening a shop on Main Street. We are operating in the virtual space. And in the shutdown we've experienced with COVID, book coaching is actually really booming right now. And it's just kind of one of those pandemic proof businesses because you do it from home. But that means you've got to be willing to understand how that world works and how to be in that world and some of the tools of that world. And if there's somebody who's just not ready, willing, and able to jump into that space, I wouldn't know how to teach them how to do it. So it's compassion, curiosity, the ability to manage a project, the ability to want to teach one-on-one, and then this digital business savvy.
I think that's so interesting. There's so many things there. I used to be a project manager, would you believe?
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, I used to lead these. I had many lives as a project manager, but one of the last ones I did before I quit, we basically had to go in and pull out a failing. Actually, I probably shouldn't. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this. It was a failing company, let's put it this way, and we were absorbing them, and there were lots of vulnerable people involved, like service users, and basically I held like a daily stand up where I'd be like literally calling people out, have you done this, have you done that, why not, what's your, there is no excuse, get it done. This sounds more like a military kind of stand up. The other thing I wanted to say is the curiosity. I think that's really interesting, and when you were talking I was thinking, so I run another podcast called Next Level Authors Podcast, with a co-host called Daniel Wilcox, and he literally is the epitome of that curiosity. He has such a charismatic way of asking questions that I don't have. So he doesn't usually send questions before an interview because, and he's even said it to me, it's the curiosity in him that leads him to ask the next question. And I adore his question style because I just can't do it. And it's not, I am curious because I have all these interesting weird oddities that I'm curious about, but I freeze when I'm not prepared. And so I'm guessing that to be a good book coach, obviously you cannot prepare in advance for those meetings where you then have to dig deeper. And so I am panicking, sat here panicking, even thinking about having to do that, because I would literally sit there and freeze about what I was going to ask next. I have to know every question that I'm going to ask. Of course, I will ask more during an interview, and obviously I'm on a tangent now, but for the most part, I have to know that structure before I go. So yeah, I found that really interesting, and I can see Daniel making an amazing book coach just because of those. Like he is the epitome of those qualities and skills. Okay, so we've talked about the personality traits. What other skills would a book coach need to have, or I guess what experience from past lives would they need to have?
Well, there's 6 key skills that I've identified that I teach in my book coach training courses, and I can whip them off here very quickly for us. So the first is mechanical editing ability, and that's just technical mechanical edits. You just know how the English language works, and that's actually quite easy to come by because it's pretty easy to learn that skill. So most of the people who come to this work are already pretty good at that. That's not to say like I'm a terrible speller and I always forget the Oxford comma and what have you, but I'm just talking about in general, you have to know how it works. And then the second skill is an understanding of narrative design. And this is something that often is not taught. It's often gleaned, like you talked about, experience from a lifetime of reading, a lifetime of watching movies and saying, well, wait, there's a plot hole, or a lifetime of just understanding what works and doesn't, and thinking about what works and doesn't. So just a sense of the way narratives work and what their structures are. The third skill that we teach is a sense of the marketplace. So this is something oftentimes the coaches who come into our training don't have, is, well, how are books bought and sold? What are agents looking for? What are the trends in how books are sold? What's happening with bookstores lately? What's happening? There's so much news. As I said earlier, the publishing industry changes all the time. So some sense about how are you going to keep up with those changes? How are you going to advise your clients about which publishing path is right for them, or how the money flows in different publishing paths, or what they're likely to make, or what they're likely to have to pay, or who's in charge of marketing? All those questions, really, so you can support and guide your writers well. And then there's that ability to manage the client. So that's just people skills. That's understanding when somebody's going off the rails, understanding when somebody perhaps is not a good fit for you, understanding when the problem at hand is straight up emotion. If a writer's not finishing a project, or they want to go back and start again right when they're almost done, or they have a shiny new idea that they want, how to manage the people part of it. And then there's the project management part we spoke about, which you would be amazing at, right? Here's the here's the goal. When are we going to hit this deadline? How many pages do you have to write to meet your, where you want to end up? What is your goal? How, what are we aiming for? How do you get there? Those are skills we teach. And then finally, the thing I've been talking about is this, how to actually run the business online. So those are the 6 skills that we teach. And the thing that's amazing is they're all teachable. So, somebody who hears all this and thinks this sounds great, but I don't understand what you mean by narrative designer. I've never understood the marketplace. I can't even figure that out for my own book, or, they're things that can be taught. And I also want to point out that what's not on this list, because I think it's as important as what's on this list. And what's not on this list is you don't have to have an agent of your own. You don't have to have a bestseller of your own. You don't have to have an MFA or a PhD in English or any sort of credential that, whatever fill in the blank credential. You don't have to have those things. The people that we have trained to be really successful book coaches, in some cases, don't even have a high school degree, or they majored in, I have a student right now who was anthropology. She's an anthropologist. And we have a student also who was a birth doula. So you don't have to have a certain background or any sort of certain credential. And the reason for that is I really, truly, firmly believe that coaching a writer to do well is a totally different thing than being a writer yourself. They're 2 really different skills. So it's not, good writers don't necessarily make good book coaches. And I think we often see that with famous writers who hold their workshops, that we all want to go to all over the world. And they're not always great teachers because they're kind of native geniuses. They just know how to do it and they know what works for them, but they haven't really broken it down to figure out what works for somebody else.
Oh, I could not agree more with you. I get very frustrated that so many writing craft books are dry, and it is just the ultimate irony that a writing craft book should be so dull to read. That is why, so I write nonfiction and they are writing craft books, and I purposefully go out of my way to make the craft books fun and sarcastic and sweary and interesting to read. Like, the whole point is I'm a writer, and therefore if you teach writing, I honestly believe you should make it engaging. But the point I was going to make is I think that so many people struggle with that aspect in particular is because when you get good at something, it's automated. So and when you automate something, it goes into your long-term memory and into your subconscious, and because it's in your subconscious, so if, for example, you get in a car, you couldn't necessarily, after you've driven for 10 years, you couldn't necessarily tell somebody how to drive that car. You just get in and your muscle memory does it. And so to be a good teacher, you have to make conscious what is already subconscious for you. And that's why it's so hard, I think. But yeah, I love that, and I loved also that you said what was not on the list, because that's so project management. We have what's in scope and what's out of scope, which is equally important to define. So I was like, oh, that's so project management. I love it.
Well, and your books, the reason you think your books do so well is that you've taken that time to break down the process into knowable parts and show people how those parts all add up. And your collection of books is so amazing, and the voice, all of that is, that's why they work so well, because you've taken the time to really think those processes through.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. The next question is obviously a difficult one to answer because it's country specific and also to some respect also year specific and economy specific and all of that jazz. But how do you actually price being a coach? How do you price that service?
Oh, I love this question because I love talking about money. So the reason I love talking about money is that in in my book coach training programs, it always at some point for every person comes down to a conversation about money. And it comes down to that because I don't think that we as a culture, and I know you're in a different country, but I'm just talking about in all people, we don't value our writers. We don't pay them very well. We expect them to write for free for exposure. The fact that you can buy an amazing book for 99 cents, during a promotion is crazy making when you think about that that's somebody's lifetime of work or their body of work or their knowledge. And, we're not paying our writers a living wage. And so the reason that I get up on my soapbox about this is that so many book coaches therefore say, well, I can't charge to help writers because they can't pay. And so it becomes this circle of everybody saying, we're not worth anything, this is not valuable. And so the money conversation always goes to a place of talking about self-worth and of talking about what are we actually doing here. And what we're actually doing here is, as a book coach, and then I'll talk about as a writer in a minute, but as a book coach is helping somebody raise their voice and claim their confidence and do this thing they've probably wanted to do their whole life. And so I talk to coaches a lot about, what are you promising? If you're promising, well, you can write a bestseller or I can help you write a draft in 30 days, or, some sort of what I think is an unreasonable or unrealistic goal, that's a whole different thing. That's not what I'm teaching. I'm teaching people, what I say to my clients is, I will help you have total confidence in your story. I'll help you know your story and feel that your story is worthwhile and ready to go into the world. I can't tell you what's going to happen when it goes into the world. I can't guarantee that. There's so many things that might happen. There's so many, luck and timing play such a big role in publishing. So then when you talk about what our goal is, what we're actually trying to do, it becomes a service that's much more akin to, if you think about a personal trainer in a gym or, a health coach trying to help you feel better. You might have some metrics you want to hit, but oftentimes it's the process that becomes so powerful. And so I try to really work on teaching my coaches what to define as their goal. And in my own coaching contracts, it's kind of hilarious. I bend over backwards to say what I'm not promising, what I'm not guaranteeing, and what I can't do for them. And that's all a way of talking about what we can do. So that's the baseline to the conversation to talk about money, because then what we're doing, like I can give you a super simple example. There's a lot of writers need help with writing a query letter. So a query letter is the pitch letter that you write to try to get an agent. And they're half a page. They're like 150, 200, 250 words long. They're very short. They're not 100 words. I don't know what I'm talking about. They're very short. But so you think if somebody wants help editing their editing their query letter, I see so many people charging like $50 for that because it's a tiny letter, right? So let's charge $50 and I'll edit your letter and we'll go back and forth a few times and then it'll be ready to go out. And I'm just thinking that is the most insane thing I've ever heard in my entire life, because you're not thinking about what that writer really needs. So what that writer really needs is a strategic plan for approaching agents, a sense of what agents they're going to approach and why, a strategic plan for how they're going to approach those agents in batches or how they're going to do it over a time. Then they need the query letter edited, but it needs to have such a sense of what that story is and what the goal is and where it's trying to fit in the marketplace and all of these elements. And that writer needs to be prepared for this work, because it's the moment when a writer stops being a creator and starts being, they have a product to sell. So they have to prepare that mindset shift. They have to know what they need to ask of an agent, what the business transaction is going to be, what the red flags are. So if I do help somebody with a query, I charge $3,500. so, so other people are charging $50 to edit the letter. I charge $3,500 and minimum, because what I'm of all the value I'm actually giving and what I'm really doing for that person, and my clients are more than happy to pay it because I've identified what their pain is and how I can help them solve it. Because going out to an agent is terrifying, it's chaotic, it's confusing. If you haven't done it before, you don't know what to make of it. You don't know when to keep pitching or when to stop or when to quit, all of that. So I am in it with the writer, um, for the long haul. So that's a simple example of how I teach to think about money and how to talk about value and what you're delivering. So I'm just a huge fan of, don't charge by the hour, don't charge by the task, don't make it a transactional thing. If you're going to get into this work, get paid what you're worth and understand what you're really doing for people, and then deliver that value to them. So in the scenario I'm talking about, I told you I had 3 clients who are pitching right now. It's very slow in publishing right now. Things are very weird. All 3 of those pitch processes are not going well. And I have to know that I'm delivering value to them, and that at the end of the day, no matter what the outcome, they're going to be happy with my support and services as a coach to them. And I can guarantee that they would all say that. So that's how I think about money and how I teach about money, which probably doesn't answer your question, but maybe it does.
I think it does. And I think even having a ballpark for one part of your service is helpful too. And yeah, I don't really believe in the starving artist, and so I have set up multiple streams of income, and I've never put my books up for free for anything ever. I might. I'm not saying that I wouldn't, but I haven't yet. And I'm really reluctant to, because I put a lot of fucking work into them, and I deserve to get paid for them because they're good quality. And I feel that I never ever resent paying for another author's book ever. Even when I'm sent advanced reader copies, I still buy a copy of the book. So yeah, I absolutely think that we deserve to get paid, but I think for so long in society we have undervalued creativity. And the sad thing is I truly believe creativity is the cure for all. It is the panacea that society needs, if only we would be allowed to be creative in all of the different industries.
No, it's so true. We could talk about that for days, because I agree. Yeah.
Okay, thanks to one of my patrons, Meg, for the next couple of questions. So how do you go about starting to actually market your coaching business in order to find clients?
So I have a method that I teach that has proven to be very successful, and that is to really think about marketing as finding that Venn diagram where the circles overlap, where what your talent is with the writer's pain and what you can really do for them. And that's the best way to market, is to really hone in on that sweet spot. And so what that might look like is, I have a student right now. I'm so excited for her. She's a lawyer. She's been a lawyer for 30 years, and she's actually in the UK. And she wants to start a book coaching business for lawyers who want to write novels, because they all do. And she understands them so well. She understands that they might be embarrassed about this, that they might be nervous about how they're going to be perceived, that they don't know what they're doing when they're so successful in their law. And like, what a fantastic way to market a business, right? So it's like being a lighthouse for that particular kind of writer. And when she launches this business, I promise you, it's going to do really well, because the second you hear that, you think, oh, I know somebody who would use that book coach. Or if you hear, in conversation, a lawyer wants to write a book, you would send them there. Similarly, I have a book coach who really, really loves working with people for whom English is their second language. And she loves that because she really likes learning about their culture, learning about their process, learning about their, who they are and what they're bringing forth in their books. That's part of what she enjoys. And so she has a specialty that, again, if you can identify so clearly who your ideal customer is, that customer is going to find you. And, one other example I'll give is a coach who is really into speculative fiction and recognizes that the vast majority of writers of speculative fiction are men. So she's focusing on women writers, and specifically women writers who are working on issues of social justice. And that's a super narrow focus. But all of these are the foundation of excellent marketing. So the answer to the question is not like, oh, take out a bunch of Facebook ads or go to a conference and hand out your card. Like, those are just tactics. And sometimes they can be part of a marketing plan. But a really solid marketing plan is about knowing who you're serving, what are you doing for them, why are you serving them, why do you care about them, why is that your superpower, and then letting everybody that know about that. I have seen this time and again with our coaching students be the thing that works. And it's really counterintuitive. People get really nervous when I am working with them in this regard, because the instinct is to think, oh, I'm a newly minted book coach, I'm going to do anything anybody asks. Like, oh, you need that? I'll do that for you. You need this other thing? You need a manuscript read? You need a chapter edit? You need a proofread? You need a query letter? I'll do anything for anyone because I'm scared and I just want clients. And it's the confidence to say no, to say that's not for me, that's for this other person, or I know somebody who'd be better at that than me. What I really do is X. It's way easier said than done, but it's the thing that 100% works to run a great business.
I think that's so interesting, and I can see that across so many different facets in the industry as well. So Orna Ross, who's the director at Ally, wrote an article some time ago now, but one that forever changed my outlook on marketing. And she basically talked about how authors need to find the thing that is uniquely them and then do that thing. And I everything that you're saying echoes of that here, that a book coach really needs to find that thing that is uniquely them in terms of what is it only they can help another author with. And I just agree so much, because when I talk about this all the time, but I have 3 values or 3 principles that I adhere to in everything, in every public appearance, in every book, in every online, anything that I do. And that's to be motivational. Note, I didn't say inspirational, but motivational, which is probably where I get the old whip out. To be knowledgeable, and to be a little bit rebellious. And I put that everywhere, in everything. Every time I open my mouth, I'm trying to embody those things, because those are the things that are most me, about me. And when I got very clear on that, all of a sudden I saw very quickly my platform, my audience, my readers like explode. And so, yeah, I can completely understand what you're saying in terms of that's, how a book coach should approach their marketing.
There's a writer that I would recommend anybody reads who's thinking about marketing this kind of business, a book coaching business or any small business. Her name's Pia Silva, and she has a column, an online column at Forbes. It's a small business column, but she writes about, ostensibly she writes about branding, but all of her lessons, every time I read one of her columns, I'm just like, yes. Like, I think I'm her most obsessive fan, because I really think that people in the creative spaces, including writers and book coaches, have so much to learn from business people, and actually vice versa. But I would highly recommend Pia Silva's columns
Yeah, I need to write that down before I forget.
for marketing. Yeah.
Okay, so are there any warning signs that help you recognize a good client from one that might not be suitable for you personally? And obviously, I understand that that might work both ways. So for any writers who are listening that would be interested in having a book coach, what are the warning signs for them as well?
Such a good question. So on the coaches side, in terms of working with writers, I really teach this a lot. This idea of getting the ideal client, the right client, that's how you're going to succeed. And you don't want clients who are not suited to you. And that goes to what you just talked about, which is knowing, what are you about? What do you like? Somebody should not come to me who is super fragile and just starting out and not sure they want to do this. Like, don't come to me, because I'm all about driving hard to getting an agent. Like, that's what my place is. And there are many, many people who are super nurturing and super kind and super patient, and that's who you should go to. So it starts with knowing on both sides what you're about, what you're good at, what you're trying to achieve. And then the red flags would be, like, for me, this is a red flag, and I get this a lot. Somebody will say, because I charge a lot of money at this point in my career, I charge a lot. And so people will say, well, what am I going to get for all that money? And how they ask that question is going to be a red flag or not a red flag. Like, please ask that question. It's a lot of money and you should feel good about it. But if somebody comes at me and they said, well, what's the ROI of my working with you? And how many clients of yours have gotten $1 million deals? And, how fast can I expect to make this money back? And, if they're coming at me with those questions, I just immediately say, you know what, I can't guarantee you anything. I don't think I can give you what you are looking for. I think you should find somebody else. Because, like, what's the end result of that going to be? They're just going to blame me for everything. I won't be able to win, and so that's what a red flag would be for me, is just somebody who's not aligned with my values or my practices or what I do. And that starts with knowing what those are. And then on the writer side, if somebody's looking for a coach or an editor or somebody to hire, it honestly starts with exactly the same thing. You got to know what you're looking for. You have to know what you want. Like, why are you willing to go and pay somebody to help you? What are you hoping to achieve? Are you, and you have to be honest about that. Are you thinking, I hate my day job, I want to quit it, and I think book writing is the way for me to do that. I have some great ideas. You're laughing. I have some great ideas, and I'm looking for somebody to help me with that. Say that if that's what you really think, because you know what? There's a way to think about that. Like, I have a friend who cranks out romance novels. She is super savvy and smart. She makes a boatload of money. And, if that's your main goal, there's things you could think about. There's things you could do. If your goal is, I just want to see this book in my hands because I'm sick of talking about doing it someday and I want to actually do it, that's something different. You've got to know all the different layers of what your goal are, so that you can then ask for what you need from that coach or person. And if you're frustrated that you've been rejected, if you don't understand why, if you've tried to do it on your own and you want to seek professional help because you want to see that maybe you've been doing something wrong and you're open to learning, that's something really different too. So in both cases, it just starts with super radical self-knowledge and being willing to say what you really need, and not taking on a relationship or a partnership that's not going to give it to you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned having self-knowledge and self-awareness. This is why I would be a shite coach, because I talk regularly about how I don't really know myself. all the time. And I swear that I would have been a writer much younger if I'd just known myself a little bit better. But what was I going to say before that? No, yeah, I'm glad that you, because I was just sort of coming to that conclusion that actually being a book coach requires you to know yourself a lot. And the other thing that I was going to say is it sounds like the ideal client, client, maybe this is just for you, but I think obviously for a lot of people who want to be good book coaches is to have a client who is willing to take responsibility for their actions. That's kind of what I heard from you, because those people who are already frustrated and angry because the world hasn't, landed on their lap a agent or whatever contract, they obviously are not accepting responsibility for that. They are externalizing the blame. And
Yep.
so I guess one red flag would be somebody who doesn't, and I'm not saying you have to always internalize everything, but you have to take responsibility for your actions. You're not going to get anywhere unless you do the work. And I suppose being a coach, you don't actually do the work for them. They still have to do the work. Okay, what kind of offering should a coach give? Should it be short sessions, long sessions, multiple sessions? Should it be packages? Do you give a free consult at the start? All of the above? Like, what does that look like?
Well, I'm sure you can get a sense that it can look like anything depending on so many factors. I was just consulting with a new book coach who's a mom, and she's stuck at home with her kids in the pandemic now, and she's a single mom, and she's trying to launch a book coaching business now. So it would not make any sense for her to offer something that's going to take a ton of daytime hours, a ton of phone call schedules, because her kids are going to interrupt her all the time. Even when I was talking to her, their Netflix show was over and they come patting in, Mom. So she needs to do something that she can kind of do fast. She can do in short bursts of time, maybe before the kids get up or after they go to sleep. It's kind of context dependent on what she can offer. And there are many things you can do within that framework. So, it just depends on what that coach is about and what they're doing and why they're doing their coaching. A lot of book coaches train because they're writers, and that writing income is very, very up and down. And, you can make a lot when a book comes out, and then you can make nothing. And so book coaching as a side gig can help stabilize that income. And if you're looking for that, you're going to be looking for things that you can do that are going to be consistently bringing in clients and that are not going to take all your writing mojo from you. So it's kind of a really looking at all of those things and figuring it out. I personally just deeply love the long relationship aspect of working with the writer over time. And I used to do short strategy sessions where I would help people like, what's your burning question about your book or about publishing? I'll help you with that. We'll do an hour-long consult. And I think you do that actually.
Yeah,
And
I was just going to say, I love that. I do, I do that sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, that totally suits me. Just a fish bash.
Yeah, right. And I don't like that because I'm always like, well, did you do it? What happened? And then I want to call them or write them or.
That's not my problem.
See, so that's what I mean. You have to know. And there are people who love what you do, and I want to be part of the unfolding story and the long process. And sometimes that means I have a client right now who had a baby in the middle of a book, and so I've been with her through the entire pregnancy, and now she has a child, and I become part of the whole unfolding of all the things. And so it's just what suits you and what you like.
Absolutely. I'm giggling because I very specifically called it consulting and not coaching, because the thing that I love is to be there for that one high-powered, intense hour and see the light bulb go, because it's a very focused, very niche 1 hour where we will work together to find and solve whatever the issue is. But yeah, I can't be a hand holder, or I can't invest over the long term. I want to help in a short, sharp injection of adrenaline, and then and that's so me as well. When I look at my life, that I am very intense for a short period of time, and then I go collapse.
But see, that's genius, because you know that, you're good at it, you can help people, right? That's exactly what you want to do. And that's exactly, there's so many places to help writers. And the worst thing to do is to say, I can help anybody do anything. And there was a phase in my career where I actually did do that. And I said that, and I would sort of pride myself on that. Like, you got a problem with anything, any genre, at any point in the process, any kind of publishing, I can help you. And I thought that was the way. And over time, it's not sustainable. You have to really, become an expert in something.
Yeah, and know yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I do know myself better than I'm giving myself credit for.
I think you do. I was going to say, you're like, look at the name of our podcast we're on. Like, you totally know.
Well, maybe it's because I've grown into that, but I spent so long not knowing, like growing up, that it's hard for me to then recognize, actually I've got to that place where I do know. Okay, what kind of lead magnet or sales funnel do you have? Do you use or create for this kind of service to direct people into your coaching system? Not system, ecosystem.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and if people don't know what that is, it's usually a very small, short, easy giveaway that brings people into your ecosystem, to sign up for your newsletter or to do a small package with you or what have you. And it's a thing that writers need to think about as well. And book coaches can do so many different things. They can give away page edits or consulting calls, give away, meaning either a small fee, or if it's part of their process, to have a free something. There can be chapter checklists. I've seen people do world building for sci-fi or speculative fiction sort of things. At the moment, I've just finished constructing a 6-part free video series on what a book coach is, and all the things we've been talking about, actually, like who would make a good one, what are those 6 skills you need, how do I market, how do I make money, just to answer all the questions people typically have about book coaching. And I put together that video series that's where I drive everyone to now. So it's all the tips and tricks that all the business people use for this are ones that we can borrow and steal for our own selves as well. So I'd love for people to go check out my series if they're hearing this and thinking this sounds like so much fun. The series is really designed just to really help you think, is this right for me? Is this something I want to do? And you can find it at bookcoaches.com/ABC.
I don't think I have that link, so would you be able to share that link with me, and then I'll make sure that goes into the show notes.
Absolutely, yeah.
I was just looking at the links, and I don't think that one is in there. Okay, this is always my favorite question. This is, I'm cackling on the inside, devilish cackle. This is the Rebel Author podcast. So tell me about a time you unleashed your inner rebel.
I love that you asked this. It's always my favorite part of listening to it as well. It totally stressed me out when I saw that you were going to.
Everyone says that. Everybody says that. Literally everybody. And it makes me love that I ask it even more.
Well, it's just so funny because my response is to think I've never done anything rebellious in my whole life. That one time I crossed over the double yellow line when I was driving. But I was thinking about it, and I have done something super rebellious recently, which is with my business, Author Accelerator, which is this book coach training and certification business, for 5 years, I was directing everything toward writers. I built a business. I started it when I was age 50. So even just starting being an entrepreneur over the age of 50 was pretty rebellious to begin with. But I spent 5 years building this business. And last year, I really stepped back and looked at it and realized that it was not working the way I wanted it to work. It was not doing what I needed it to do. And I blew the whole thing up. And I pivoted to focus solely on training book coaches. And it felt super terrifying. I made a lot of people angry. I let a lot of people down. People accused me of not caring about writers or only caring about money or, not being a person of integrity, all these things that really kind of cut close to the bone. And so my rebellious act was doing it and sticking with it and putting a stake in the ground and saying I'm doing it. And I actually literally don't know of another company anywhere that's doing what I'm doing. So I'm sort of making a market for book coaching, and it might not work. I mean, there might not be a market. It might not be a sustainable thing. And I've staked my entire reputation on it. I've staked so much money on it. I've staked so much time on it. And I feel sometimes like I'm walking on a high wire, which is super fun, but also yikes. So the rebellious thing was making that change and going all the way with it and just putting it all on the line.
I love that so much, and I love that I feel like to be an entrepreneur and to be, certainly as an indie anyway, you have to embrace that mindset and that going all in and that leap of faith. Like I feel like there are so many leaps of before I left my job, I assumed that the only leap of faith I would have to make was quitting my job. But how naive, dear sweet Sasha. There are so many more leaps of faith along the way, and this business of being employed by yourself and having a business and having a company is not for everybody, and I sort of like it even more because not everybody can do this. It is very much for a certain person of a certain mindset, and what a wonderful conclusion, because is that not everything that we have spoken about, knowing yourself and knowing where your strengths, your weaknesses, and what is uniquely you. Can you tell listeners where they can find out more about you, your books, and also your services and your courses?
Yes, please come visit bookcoaches.com/ABC. You can find everything about us there, the video series I was speaking of, what book coaching is about, who it's for. You can sign up for our courses there. And if you're looking to be coached, we actually have a free service where we match writers to our certified coaches. And you can find that at authoraccelerator.com. So that's for a writer who thinks they might want a book coach. We will ask you about your project and ask you about your style and ask you what your goal is and what you're looking for, and we will match you to a coach for free. And if you work with that coach, the coach pays us a small referral fee for that service, so it's no cost to the writer. So book coaches, people who are interested in coaching, can come to bookcoaches.com/ABC, and writers can go to authoraccelerator.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. Thank you also to all of the show's patrons. If you would like to get early access to all of the episodes, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/Sasha Black. Thank you also to everybody listening. I'm Sasha Black. You were listening to Jennie Nash, and this was the Rebel Author Podcast. Next week, I'm talking to Tiffany Yates Martin, and oh my goodness, we geeked out big time. I was super excited, super in love with this conversation, and I think you guys are going to get so much from it. We are talking all about editing and the nitty gritty in your manuscripts and your stories. So look out for that next week. Don't forget to tune in and subscribe on your podcatcher. And when you have a moment, please leave a review.